Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele, and I will be your nerd today, and any other day that you choose to watch my funny little show. So, hi, how are you? I hope everything's going well today, and welcome to the second episode of March to Conquest. Dun dun dun. Obviously, we'll do the Week in Bryan first. Get that in and out the door before we move on to the Conquest related topic of today. The Week in Bryan has been an excellent week. So last weekend was, you know what? Let's do this in a different order. Let's shake it up. Normally I do my gaming stuff first. We're gonna do my personal stuff first. I am the lightest I've been in. Well, I'm still heavy, but the lightest I've been in over 2 years. I have not quite broken the 60 pounds lost mark, but I'm getting there. I'm finally losing again. I think now that winter seems to finally have kind of moved on and things are starting to warm up and I'm walking to the post office more and stuff like that, I think that's helping a little bit. So, plus there. The new cat, Nura, is doing wonderfully. She has definitely become kind of my cat. I mean, I don't really necessarily believe in, individual members of a household being like, this is my dog or this is my cat. But I have always known that there's certain animals imprint stronger to certain people, and Nura has definitely chosen me as her person. It's awfully cute, and every time I walk past a table or something where she is nearby, she will run up and jump, not onto me, but front paws on me and try and climb and pick me up. It's super cute, and she's doing really well. So I'm very happy there. Painting wise, I'm just probably later today. I will finish. Honestly, probably by the time you watch this, it'll be done. I will finish up a corporate commission that I got assigned a little over a month ago. I've got a personal commission that I need to get slogging on for a client, a long-standing client and friend. But in the interim, I have I needed something to work on while I'm waiting for wet blending and stuff to dry. So I did from the Heroes of the Grid Power Rangers board game. I did. Let's see if I can get this thing to focus on him at all. Maybe if I put it in front of my face. Oh, there we go. In front of my face, focus. So you can't really see him terribly well. This is Trek, the Green Psycho Ranger, who hasn't been in the TV shows, but he has been very big in the comics. Psycho Rangers are basically dark, scientifically created anti-rangers. And they're pretty cool. And in the board game, they're a group threat. They are a team of bad guys, basically, depending on how many players are playing or how many Psycho Rangers are present to fight against you. And then when they show up in mass. It's pretty cool. First off, it's a great board game from Renegade. And I'm not even just saying that because I'm biased because I love Power Rangers, and I'm biased because I love Renegade. It's actually a fun game. And even if Power Rangers aren't your bag, but you like the style and the rules engine of the game itself, Renegade just announced was it G.I. Joe Operation Overdrive, which is a G.I. Joe themed version of the Heroes of the Grid game using that same kind of mechanic, that same style. So that's gonna be super rad when that comes out. I think it's pre-orderable right now, but I'm not sure. So I got this little guy done, and I started with him because I don't really paint the models for the board game because they are a board game. They just get beat up. But I do have some extras. I'll get to that in a minute. I did some extras, and one of the extras I had was Psycho Green. And Psycho Green has become, for those of you who don't know, I am very heavily involved with Renegade Games. As a contractor, I helped design the Essence 20 system for the role-playing games, and I am a continued employee when it comes to writing more stuff. I'm very heavily focused on Power Rangers and Transformers. I've dabbled a little in G.I. Joe, but a couple of the other guys that work on the G.I. Joe team are G.I. Joe savants. I mean, like, I consider myself pretty knowledgeable when it comes to geek cultures and especially, like, you know, old 80s cartoons and stuff. But whoa, one of my coworkers, Ryan Costello, he is, first off, he's an amazing guy. But secondly, I have never met a person who knows more just on the top of their head about G.I. Joe. And I mean that, like, not just the stories. I mean about the toys, about the background of the license, about, you know, the names of the writers, the names of the artists, the names of, you know, the companies that bought the European version of that. Like, it's staggering. And it's every single time I talk to him and we get onto the topic of G.I. Joe lore, I am not, originally I would say humbled. Like, I was just like, oh my God, I don't know anything. But I'm impressed. It is an insane amount of knowledge packed into Ryan's head. So when G.I. Joe stuff comes up, he is the go-to, obviously. And I would not have it any other way. So being heavily involved with Renegade and obviously heavily involved with Essence 20 is we just released a little over a month ago, released the Power Rangers game. And there's rules questions, as with every system. And the rules questions, I have been spending an hour a day, Monday through Friday, on the Renegade Games Discord, the role-playing game Discords, to answer questions, give people the intention, if they're reading a rule and they're like, you know, how does this work, helping them through this. And I think that's helped, hopefully it's helped the community a lot. But on that platform, my avatar is that of the Green Psycho Ranger, and my my sign off is "Let's Go Psycho." I'm a huge fan of the Psycho Rangers. I think that they're so cool, and in the comic books, they go deeper into the mentality. That when you see the Psycho Rangers in the TV show, they really do come off as just sort of mustache twirly weapons. You know, they are evil rangers sent to destroy the good rangers. But when you get into the comics and you get into the depth of what it took to create them, the fact that they are not always the same person, there might be a clone of that person created from a data card. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very deep story, and the story, when last we saw the canon versions of the Psycho Rangers, everybody but the green one is sticking to his guns. All the rest of them are learning how to be individuals, how to be people and not just weapons. Spoiler alert. But it's a very, very cool thing. And so I have always loved the Psycho Rangers since their inception. And when the comic came out and we learned that Trek, this Zybrian alien from Zybria, was the first Green Ranger. He used to be was the first Green Psycho Ranger. He used to be the Green Supersonic Ranger, but he backstabbed his team. I mean, there's so much more depth there to the story that led to the Psycho Rangers. So it's, you know, that has just kind of become sort of part of my Power Rangers persona online. And so when I was looking at what to paint in between models, I had an extra Green Psycho Ranger, and I was like, you know what? It would make the most sense for me to do him. So now I have a little desktop buddy. He'll probably end up going over here on my on my collective pop culture throne, to overlook my good deeds. But so real quick, why I have an extra green Power Ranger and an extra yellow and an extra, I believe, blue. I think he's blue. So when I recently was able to at Renegade Con, which we'll talk about here in a second. Last weekend, I was able to finally drop the secrecy and tell people what I've been working on, and that is the Power Rangers Sourcebook Across the Stars, which is taking your Power Rangers game and putting it into space and in alien planets and things. And there's a huge threat section in that book, and in that threat section, there's a subsection for the Psycho Rangers. And this is the first time they're getting role-playing game stats, first time they're getting role-playing game rules, and so I was able to kind of let everybody know that. But while I was designing those, while I was designing the threats, I needed reference points, I needed some info and some inspiration, and so I went down to my local game store and I picked up, for Heroes of the Grid, I picked up the Rise of the Psychos box set. To give me the cards and the models and stuff. Well, that box set came with 2 Yellow Rangers and no Red Rangers. So I called customer service, and Jenny, who's amazing, worked it through and said, "All right, cool. I'll get you a Red Psycho sent out." Well, box shows up, and it's got an extra yellow, an extra green, and an extra blue, but no extra red. And so I called her back, and I was like, "Hey, is there multiple boxes coming?" She's like, "No, I don't think so. Why?" I'm like, "Well, because the guy I need is still not here, and you gave me another Yellow Ranger. That makes 3. We had some laughs. A couple days later, I have got the Red Psycho in the mail, so all that's been taken care of. But so I have these extra models lying around, and you know me, I love, when it comes to having, something I've never painted before, I'm a big fan. So I will probably paint up those other ones as well at some point. Maybe even have them be part of the giveaways for a raffle prize, comment raffle prize. But either way, that's where he came about. That was that story. I know that was very long-winded to tell you, basically, I have an extra Green Ranger and I painted him, and I hope you like him, because he's cool. Let's go Psycho. Gaming-wise, I got to play in both Straw... no, I didn't play with Curse of Strahd. I didn't. Yeah, no Curse of Strahd this week. We did play the Waking Realms game, which is the game, the kind of higher fantasy, where I'm the capoeira cat monk, that is very focused on justice. I'm Catman. And it was a very good episode, or a very good game session. I always call game sessions episodes because I view everything as kind of like a TV show in my head. So we got in the city. We saved the princess. This was a very good game of let's fight the 2 big bads. And one of the big bads ended up getting away. Dimension Door. I hate it. 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 And I really wish we had someone who could counterspell all day, every day. But Dimension Door got one of the bad guys away. The other bad guy we were able to take care of, and bring his remains back to the lawful ruler. The lawful ruler was like, "You can have anything you want," And so the rest of the session was us basically kind of planning out what we're gonna do for the next couple of weeks, kind of in downtime. And we all had different things we were talking about doing. Some have skill tests, some are spending money, whatever. And at the end of it, before we moved on to the next session, one of the other players, our artificer, he's a little gnome, our artificer basically made a very powerful magic item for my character, because this whole time, as a monk, I generally don't need much. Protective items are nice, but like when it comes to weapons or when it comes to armor, I don't ever take that stuff. And so the fact that my character has always been focused on this justice aspect and doing the right thing and trying to save the people, and I've given more money back to the communities than a treasure I've kept for myself, and I've claimed magic items that no one else really could use in order to sell, and then use that money to help people. Like it's been a thing. The Artificer spent a bunch of his resources, a bunch of his time, and a bunch of his, like, kind of in-between game actions on making me a magic item. And it's really good. He calls it the Blade of the True Hero. And it is a short sword, so I can use it with I can use it as a monk, and I can use it to trigger my bonus strikes, and it's very, very cool, and it does a bunch of cool things, and it gives me a chance that I can dispel magic now. It's got a lot of, like I said, it does a lot of cool stuff, but we're starting to get to the point in the campaign where I think, I've mentioned this before, where I think it's ramping up for the big bad. So I think what we're probably going to end up doing is gearing ourselves up, and after this downtime, going after the one that got away, and then dealing with her. So very cool. Yeah, so talked about Renegade Con. Renegade Con was last week. That's Renegade Games' online convention where a bunch of people got to play our games, but also we did a bunch of panels talking about games that are coming out, things to look for, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. If I do, and all of those videos are on. All of the videos are on the Renegade Twitch channel under videos on demand. They're all on, some of them are starting to show up on YouTube. So whatever if you want to get caught up, if you want to do stuff, you want to find out what we had to say, head on over to Renegade Games' Twitch, look at the videos on demand from special events. You'll find us. We did a bunch of cool stuff. It was really, really neat. Had a great week with the Warzone Eternal community. We had a couple of hiccups, a couple of people that were not happy with how things were being handled for the Kickstarter coming up, but hopefully we did let them know, as a company, Resnova is like 2.5 dudes, and I don't even count as a half dude for that company. I'm just a contractor, and most of my work is already done. But they, they're making sure they don't bite off more than they can chew. They're focusing on the things that will hopefully bring in the most capital, no pun intended. It's a smart business plan, and it's the thing that so many companies out there, when they start seeing those dollar signs just racking up, they throw themselves in further to try and get more of those dollar signs on the Kickstarter. That's not where you want to get. Yeah, it's nice to get a big multi-million-dollar Kickstarter. Woo, huge money. But it also means that you are having to deal with a ton of moving parts. So it's almost better to do a smaller Kickstarter, a solid, focused effort to get the game off the ground, and then you use that momentum to build good relationships with stores, to build a nice web store, to make sure the community knows this is how cool this game is. Tell your friends. Rather than trying to make a giant Kickstarter thing where then players are like, wait, I didn't get it on the Kickstarter? Well, then I'm not going to spend extra money to get what you got for this. So, it's just good business. And after we got through a few naysayings, I think people are really starting to come on board. In fact, one guy is doing almost like every other day YouTube talks about what he hopes to see out of Warzone Eternal. So I think that's going to be super cool. I'm very excited. Not just for the game, not just for the models, not just for the recognition of, yay, I made a new game. It's just a very cool property. It's a very cool license, and I want more people to play it. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else to add to the Week in Bryan. So let's get down to business. So today, oh, I do have something to add. So, as part of the semi-sponsoring of these next handful of next handful of episodes of Tales from a Professional Nerd, the March to Conquest, every week I'm drawing a different comment raffle for every March video. The last one will actually be announced on... No, the last one, I'm going to count April 1st as part of the March to Immortality, or the March to Conquest, because that's the day that the one that I filmed, it the day before, that will come out on that Friday. So we'll get that taken care of. And that will be the last episode. I think, maybe, unless I can find a way to do one while I'm at GaryCon, but either way, Leo at Parabellum has given us the ability to give away one access code for a free box of Brute drones when you buy something from the Parabellum e-store. And from episode 134, our winner is Tom Vanderoy. Tom Vanenderoy. I hope I got your name right. I will, tomorrow when this comes out, I will comment on episode 134 to tell you that you won. And then I just need you to basically give me your email address, because Leo is going to send you the details himself on how to use that code, where to go, plug in your numbers and stuff. So we'll get back to you, but congratulations, Tom. Specifically, it was these "keep those Warzone snippets coming, can't wait to see what you guys have brewed up" comment that won the day. All right, well then let's get into it. Dun dun dun. All right, so last week we talked about last episode we talked about the different factions. We gave you kind of fluff overviews of these guys. Today I want to talk about the kind of rough rules of the game themselves. I'll go through the general stats, go through the dice mechanic, and talk about how the models function. So, building a force is pretty easy. You set a points number. The average at tournaments apparently have been 2,000. You pick a character to be your warlord, and then each character has mainstay units and restricted units that they are allowed to bring. You are allowed to bring one restricted unit for every mainstay unit that you have, and you must have at least one mainstay unit for every character. That's just hands down, you have to have. And there's a double whammy for that. There's a double reason for that. The first is just for game balance purposes, to make sure that you're not just buying 50 characters and being like, haha, I've got all the magic in the world. It is also that the mechanics of the game itself, normal characters don't get to run around on their own unless they are riding a giant dragon or something along those lines. They don't just run around. They run around as part of a unit or a regiment. And what happens is regiments are made up of stands. So here's this stand from Conquest that you can see a real good one. So it's got 4 base slots in it, and most regiments are 3 units. Boop, boop, boop. So 12 basic guys to start. Now, if you put a character in a regiment, they are on one of these as well. They are put into a square, and then the other 3 squares are either used for retinue models, basically living war gear that alter your character, or you leave them blank and your character is on a stand of their own. I'm going to actually put like spacer bases in there just in case, but either way, that's how this unit base works. Now, of the unit bases, there's the regular small 4x which is what I'd say 85% of this game is on these. Their units or regiments are made up of infantry, and that's on these. There are the one pop small, and that is a full square. So there would be, I have one, but I didn't grab it. Same size base, but instead of four small ones, there's one large one in the middle, and that's going to be for things like your brutes, like your cavalry, stuff like that, where it's one per unit base, and then your regiment is made up of multiple unit bases. And then there's a third size that I don't even have because my Hellbringer Drake has not arrived yet. I'm hoping before the end of this month he will, and I'll be able to do an unboxing on one of these videos, which would be super cool. They are on a much larger base. Their base is like almost 4 of these with one big spot in the middle, and that is for things like giants, dragons, drakes, the T-Rex from the Wadroon. That's right. It's called the Apex Predator, but it's a T-Rex. That's the base sizes in this game. There's just 2 sizes, and then whether or not you have infantry or brutes on a small one. That's the difference. That's all there is. And then you use those regiments. You build the characters. Characters go in the regiments as stands of their own, and that is honestly probably the #1 way I've lost characters in this game, is by having their unit destroyed around them, because characters cannot stand on their own in this. They are considered to be overwhelmed if that happens, if the unit is killed around them. So you end up making sure that hopefully your warlord is either super tough to kill on his own, or like in his own right, or maybe he bolsters his unit to keep them from dying off around him. It's a pretty cool mechanic. I like it. Speaking of mechanics, so once you've built your force, you take a look at the individual characters. They've got all kinds of add-ons. This is actually one of the things that I will say is probably, it's definitely the most fiddly in the system, is all the little moving parts, and there's a lot of things that go on to characters that are like, you can only have one of these. You can only have one of these. If you have this, you can't have this. You're this type of character, you can't have those, but you can have these. Is the fact that Parabellum created an automated system, an army builder that is all just click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. It is by and far better to build your characters and stuff that way, because it doesn't allow you to really make any major mistakes whereas you could be like, oh, I didn't mean to give them tier 2 combat benefits and tier 3 personal benefits. It's going to let you know, big red light's going to show up, a big red set of text that's going to be like, hey, this is wrong. It's totally worth it. But then once you've got your army built, your various characters with their various mainstays, and then possibly some restricteds, you then figure out what scenario you're going to play, and you bring it to the table, and then you start your deployment, or you start building your initiative deck, your command deck. Every unit, period, whether they're in a regiment, whether they're not in a regiment, are they by themselves, are they a massive thing, are they a small thing riding a massive thing, everything has a unit card that goes into the command stack when they are available to activate. And then at the beginning of your turn, you shuffle through and alter the position of your command stack, and then it sits down face down, and you have to hopefully remember what you did, who you set up for what, because I've definitely made those mistakes where you do something in the wrong order and be like, oh no, I've ruined my entire turn. But then one at a time, as you guys go back and forth initiative-wise, you flip over these cards, and the cards are what determine what goes next. So you have the agency to set your unit functions, but if you forget, if the dice screw something up, if your opponent has something that's like knock the top 2 cards off your thing and put them underneath, there's all kinds of things that could alter that, but by itself, that's the initiative order of the units. And then once they show up to the battle, which, by the way, the battlefield starts empty, barring special rules, and then your models walk on from your table edge, or if you have pushed far enough with a capable unit, it sets your reinforcement line further down the way, so you can come in on the flanks and stuff. It's really a very cool system. You have to suspend a little bit of disbelief that, you know, a guy with a, you know, paintbrush can't just draw on the map and say this is what we're doing, or, you know, someone who's like, no, I disbelieve in this. You know, we're not gonna head down that route, and instead we will stick with the status quo. But flanking's a big deal. It's also a trait, but we're not going to get into the traits and stuff, because there is a lot of little traits in this game. Now, they seem to be, with almost no exception that I can tell, very universal trait terms, like barrage, like armor piercing, like cleave, and a lot of them have a numerical value after it, and that is a universal. If you have cleave 1, you ignore 1 point of your opponent's armor, or 1 point of your opponent's defense in close combat. This guy, if he has cleave 1, it does the same thing. So the universal terms, once you've learned them, specifically once you learn the ones that are very commonplace in your force, it will make things move a lot smoother as far as like figuring out what everything does. But these special traits help modify what you're doing with your stats. We'll get to your stats here just in a second, but I do want to let you know, when I'm reading through these stats, you're gonna go, wait, why is a high number good? You know, what's the difference? The gaming mechanic for this game, with, as far as I can tell, no exception, is every time you pick up a die and you roll it, you want it to roll low. You want it to roll under your skill. You want it to roll under your your defense. You want to roll under your defense to block that attack. You want to roll you want to roll low every time you pick up a d6. And the system itself, how you move guys. Let's go ahead and pull up. I'm going to pull up a basic household guard unit, bloop, from the 100 Kingdoms. These, if you remember correctly, these are the general human forces, the cavalry, the very common medieval feel. And the household guard, if I am correct, I believe they're the guys with halberds. I think they're the halberdiers. So, you know what? I'm going to move this so I'm looking at you while I'm reading this, so that way it's not, you know. So, household guard. This is the breakdown for a unit. It tells you what type they are. Are they infantry? Are they brutes? Are they cavalry? Are they a monster? Are they a character? In this case, infantry. It gives you your class. The class, not fighter, mage, or anything like that, like D&D, the class of these units determines whether or not they can hold the line against reinforcements, whether or not they score, whether or not they can score objectives, and how fast they come in to the game. So one of the things that I really, really, really like about Conquest is not everything starts on the board, and it's not a tactical decision. It's not like, I'm holding back. No, it is light forces on turn 1. You roll dice for all of your light forces. Light forces, or light class units, arrive on, if you roll a 4 or less, on turn 1, and on turn 2, light units are on a, what is it? light units are automatic on turn 2. Medium units are now on a 2 or less. Turn 3, light units are automatic. Medium units are on a 4 or less. Heavy units are on a 2 or less. If you see how I'm doing this, and then most games run at least 8 turns, possibly longer. And so what this does is that it means you have a good idea what is coming, but you don't necessarily know exactly when. There might be a little bit of wiggle room. And it means that, like, some of these units, when you look at some of the stats of these units, the heavy units, you're like, this is really powerful. They're not able to be in the game from the beginning of the very first turn. So because of that, because they can't be there from Jump Street, they can put a little bit more oomph into these guys because they show up late game. They show up after, people have maybe started taking casualties. It's possible. I've definitely had issues with my Dwegum Dragon Slayers, which are like my best heavy infantry that I currently have models for. I've had games where they show up long enough to basically hit the field, look around, and then the game is over. So that's the trade-off for this whole class. It tells you how many points they are. In this case, the Household Guard is 150 points for their base 3. So for 3 stands is the base unit size, and it's 150 points. And then you can, in this case, it actually tells you how many additional, it says, it doesn't say how many, it just says for 50 points per additional stand. So if I have 2 boxes of these guys, of these Household Guard, and I want to field a big block, like 6 tiles, that'll end up being 300 points without any other upgrades, if that makes any sense. It talks about, before I get into the stats themselves, it talks about whether or not the unit has a draw event. Draw events are things that happen automatically when you draw that guy out of your command deck. So when it's their turn and the stack comes to the fore, if they've got a draw event, it happens. A lot of times this is like, hey, this turn they get a +1 to their defense because they've got their shields up, which means if in this turn you haven't drawn them yet, their draw effect hasn't happened, so they're not using their shields yet. That's some of the tactics involved. It talks about any special rules. In the case of the house, which by the way, the Household Guard do not have any draw events. They're just basic dudes. But the Household Guard do have 2 special rules. They have Cleave 1 and Support 1. Cleave 1, like I mentioned earlier, just basically reduces the close combat efficiency of your opponent's armor and protective stuff, their defense. So in this case, Cleave 1, he just reduces his attack, their attacks just reduce 1 defense from the target. Support 1 is a little different. Support is designed, so I mentioned, let's say I fielded that 6x6, or the 3x3, the 6 block square, or 3x2, yeah. When I get into combat, the guys who are touching the enemy will get their full attacks. They get all of their attacks, they swing in. Everybody else in the unit will offer 1 support attack per stand. But because these guys have the special rule of support 1, they get an additional support attack. So in that case, the first 3 stands, they all have attack. They have 1 attack. We'll get into the stats here in a second. So that would be 12 basic attacks, plus 3 normal support attacks, plus 3 more normal support attacks. So that's what that trait does. And then of course there's other traits that, my armor's better, or I'm faster, or I'm on fire, whatever. And then before we get into the stats, it also tells you about, in this case, the Household Guard have basic options. They always get a leader, and a leader is just an alternate character guy who goes into your force, or goes into your stand in the front row, and he has +1 attack in close combat, and +1 shot if it is a ranged combat action. Basically, he's just a tiny little bit better than the regular guys. For 20 points, this unit can have a standard bearer. So basically a guy with the big flag. And the flag gives you +1 move to your march movement, to your marching advance, and also lets you re-roll charge distances because your guys are following the flag. It's pretty cool. So it's 20 points spent to make that unit a little cooler. In this case, the Household Guard specifically says additional command models. This regiment may also have one of the following options: a 30-point Arms Master. And if you click on the Arms Master, while both an Arms Master and a Noble are alive in the regiment, Noble's a type of character, the clash characteristic of the regiment is increased by +1, which seems like a perfect opportunity for us to go through and talk about the stat line of a unit. It is MVCAWRDE. There's no that. M is for march. That is your movement distance. In this case, the Household Guard moves 5 inches. Every unit in the game, in every regiment, gets 2 actions per turn. In the case of, if you want to, you can spend both of your actions to move. So in this case, they could go 10 inches, 11 if they have a standard. They could move once and attack. They could charge and then attack. You know, we'll get into the actual combat mechanics later on. But I really, before this time is up, I really want to go through the stats, so that way if you go to the army builder and look at their numbers, you'll know what they mean. So M is your maneuvering. That's how fast your guy is. It's number of inches that they get to go per action. V is your volley. Your volley is how skilled you are at ranged combat. In this case, the Household Guard has a 1. That would mean that they would need to roll 1s to hit with any kind of ranged combat. Now, being these guys are halberdiers and do not really have any ranged combat, a volley of 1 is kind of irrelevant. But it's there as a placeholder. C is for clash. Clash is your skill to hit in close combat. So in this case, the Household Guard have a clash of 2. So when they attack, they roll 1 die per attack, and on any 2s and 1s, they hit. Their attack characteristic, the A, is a 1. That means that each one of these guys on all 4 of that thing in that front row, when I said they get their full attacks, this unit would have 4 attacks. If the leader's in there, it would have 5 attacks. But and then you roll those as part of the regiment attack against equal to or under your clash. Now, I think you're seeing what's going on. W is wounds. Wounds is the same in every other game. I mean, it's wounds. If these guys have a 1, each one of these models in the stand has 1 wound. If I took 3, I would take 3 guys off, leaving 1 behind. That means if this is the upfront unit, even though since I've lost 3 members, I've only got 1 guy left. He's going to have 1 attack. Wounds vary in this game. Most infantry have 1. There's a few larger-than-life infantry that have 2. When you get into brutes, they often have 5, 6, 7, 8. Characters often have 5, 6, 8, 10. And then the beasts, the actual, big honking monsters, have 12, 13, 14, 15 or higher. I think my Hellbringer Drake has 16 wounds. Wounds is obviously important because you run out of wounds, you die. Next up is your resolve. Resolve is used in several ways. Resolve is used to determine leadership-y type things. Do I run away? Do I rally? Am I here? But also, resolve is very important. When you take wounds from anything other than a missile attack, for every wound that you suffer, you have to make a resolve check or you suffer more wounds. And now I know you're thinking, why would you suffer more wounds if you're scared? It's not wounds in the traditional sense. It's people running away. It's people that are like, I'm too frightened to fight. Did you see what happened to Henry? That sort of stuff. D on the stat line is defense. And that is when you are hit, no matter what is hitting you, there's no strength or anything, it's just you've been hit, and unless there is a cleave or armor piercing or brutal impact to take away from your defense, it's this number or lower to ignore the hits. That's your armor save. And then the last letter in a Conquest stat line is E for evasion. And evasion is ways to just completely discount an entire hit. Think of them kind of like invulnerable saves in 40k, ward saves in fantasy, an unmodified saving throw that if you've got a defense of 5 and they've got a cleave of 3, or a cleave of 4, you would normally be saving on 1s. But if you have an evasion of 2, you can choose to use evasion and save on 2s instead. A lot of things with like magical wards or special auras or things like that will have evasion. Or extremely lightly, armored troops that can be all nimbly-pimbly. That's the stat line. Characters have a lot more additions and stuff to it, a lot of like augmentatives and stuff, and monsters are just monsters. They're enormous. The Apex Predator, I am actually going to pull up the Apex Predator because it's terrifying. It is a heavy monster, costs 185 points. Its maneuverability is 8, so it goes 8 inches or 16 inches if it runs. Volley is 1, because it has no shots. Clash is 3, so it hits half the time. 10 attacks, 12 wounds, a resolve of 4, defensive only 3, but that's still half, and no evasion. It doesn't get any evasion. And then it's got a whole pile of different special rules that make it even tougher. But you'll note that it's only 185 points. And the reason why it's only 185 points is because it's a monster. So there's several things that only affect infantry, that kind of stuff. The Apex Predator can't take advantage of that. Its class is heavy, so it's going to be later in the game when it shows up. And at the end of the day, it is just one model. So you could surprise it, you could surround it. It's got a very specific line of sight. It's an impressive beast. And it's a freaking great model. Alright, so that is a stat line. That's the basic stat line. That's what the stats do. I could go through a long list of the different abilities, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure to put the link for the army builder in the description of the video. Why don't you pop over there, take a look around, read some of the stuff that I just told you about, so you can kind of decipher what you like, who you like. Make sure you do lots of clicking on things. There's lots of cool hidden HTML tags in there that tell you what stuff does, and then pop onto the comment section, like, share, subscribe, all that normal stuff. But then hop on that comment section and get involved with the raffle, because next week I'm going to give away another code to get more brute drones. So, you know how it is. Please be safe. Get vaccinated. Wear a mask in places where you think you need one. And have fun. But please, 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 play some games. We'll see you next week, where the march to Conquest will continue.